Was the Civil War really about states' rights? Think again. Long after the last shot was fired, a different battle raged, one where aging Union and Confederate veterans clashed not with rifles, but with rival claims about who had been braver, tougher, and more deserving of glory. In this video, we'll expose how their post-war feud created one of America's most enduring historical myths, burying uncomfortable truths beneath a war of words between old soldiers desperate to control how history remembered them. The truth might surprise you. If you appreciate our historical content, we'd be grateful for your support. Please like and subscribe to help us continue sharing these stories. Before we get into the heart of the matter, let's first define what the Confederate Veteran magazine was. This historic publication ran from 1893 to 1932, featuring personal recollections from Civil War veterans, updates on battlefield preservation efforts, and other topics tied to the conflict. What I find most compelling about these old issues are the vivid, first-hand battle narratives. One such account, featured in the December 1898 edition, particularly stood out to me. In that issue, a Missouri Confederate named N.B. Hogan, originally from Alabama, took issue with an October article by a Virginian about the Battle of Gaines' Mill. Hogan was frustrated by what he saw as Virginians overstating their role in the war, especially in that engagement. He wrote, "The piece in the October Veteran, written by Comrade Cooper of Fairfax, Virginia, regarding the forces involved in the bloody struggle at Gaines' Mill, is so inaccurate that I must respond." Virginians have a habit of placing General George E. Pickett and his brigade, along with their own troops, above all other Confederate soldiers. But where were Anderson's, Wilcox's, and Lee's other steadfast commanders during Pickett's famed charge at Gettysburg? Countless survivors attest that their men were at the forefront of the fighting on Little Round Top and Cemetery Ridge. Yet many accounts of July 3, 1863, would have you believe Pickett's Virginians were the sole heroes of that day. Hogan then appealed for fairness. Honorable comrades will allow this constructive criticism. What we demand is truthful history. Every veteran, when recalling events, must adhere strictly to the facts as he saw them or learned from trustworthy sources. In this passage, Hogan balances his grievances with respect. By the 1890s, just 3 decades after the war, Virginia had taken center stage in Confederate memory, largely due to the lionization of Lee, Jackson, Stuart, and A.P. Hill. These men became icons of Southern valor, and their Virginia ties elevated the state's prestige. But as Hogan noted, many non-Virginians resented this imbalance. For instance, the famous assault at Gettysburg is remembered as Pickett's charge, not Pettigrew's or Trimble's, despite 2 other divisions participating. Hogan argued this was due to Virginians' talent for self-promotion. He saw the same pattern in accounts of Gaines' Mill, a Confederate triumph during the 7 Days' battles. Hogan was especially irked by claims that Virginians alone seized the Union breastworks. He wrote, "Comrade Cooper mentions Pryor's, Pickett's, and Kemper's brigades at Gaines' Mill." But where does he acknowledge the 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 14th Alabama regiments under General Cadmus M. Wilcox? Here are the casualties from my own Company A, 11th Alabama, on that field. Yet Cooper acts as if we weren't there. C.W. Doss, L. Daniels, Jesse Daniels, Ben Elmore, Nathan Eskridge, Aya Johnson. I watched as Lieutenant Colonel Stephen F. Hale, a former U.S. Congressman from Alabama, fell in battle. Colonel Hale had just lost a son before his own death. Our previous commander, ex-Governor Sydenham Moore, had been killed at Seven Pines, and Hale led us into Gaines' Mill. Hogan then detailed his regiment's actions to prove their crucial role. In the same issue, a Texan also challenged Cooper's article, specifically his dismissal of Hood's Texas Brigade in the Union line's capture. George T. Todd, captain of Company A, 1st Texas Infantry, responded. Adjutant J. Cooper of Fairfax wrote in the October Veteran about Pickett's brigade at Gaines' Mill. I must address his closing lines. I've heard it claimed that Hood's troops took these works, but that's untrue. Just as Pickett's left wing seized those 12 guns, Hood's men arrived, advancing in column. A journalist observed the troops and inquired with an officer about their unit, later reporting they belonged to Hood's command. If that officer survives today and reads these words, or if General Pryor were to do so, they would corroborate this account, just as Comrade M. Jacoby of the 1st Texas Regiment, Hood's brigade, has done. Jacoby, now residing in Woodville, Mississippi, lost his leg on that brutal battlefield and vehemently rejects Comrade Cooper's dismissive assertion. Let me be clear. No veteran of Hood's brigade seeks to undermine the hard-won honors of Pickett and his men. I watched their legendary charge at Gettysburg, poised like a coiled spring as they stormed Cemetery Heights. Hood's brigade stood ready, awaiting only the command to reinforce them. Had Meade and Hancock pursued Pickett's battered retreating line, their apparent victory might have crumbled into Longstreet's triumph. Lee, Longstreet, and Pickett were not defeated. They were constrained by dwindling ammunition, particularly artillery rounds, which halted their advance toward Baltimore. Now consider Comrade Cooper's claim. Both he and I were in the ranks that day, engulfed in the chaos of battle as dusk fell, rifles blazing, cannons thundering, the Southern yell mingling with the desperate charge of Federal cavalry covering their retreat. In such bedlam, how could anyone discern troops marching in formation? No columns paraded within 2 miles of that bloodied crest, only scattered battle lines, men breaching abatis, storming works, and firing at cavalry. Amidst riderless horses, fallen soldiers, and the din of combat, there was no orderly march, no ceremonial display. Who, then, was this officer who allegedly informed Cooper? How could Pryor or anyone else have identified specific units maneuvering in such turmoil? Yet history's claim Hood's troops seized those works, and rightly so. Official reports from every commander on the field, along with sober historical records, affirm this. Todd's rebuttal, backed by ample evidence, places Hood's brigade squarely in the fray. These disputes reveal a deeper truth. Even as veterans reunited with former foes, tensions simmered among Confederates over whose state deserved greater glory. This raises a pivotal question. Who truly owns the Civil War's narrative? Was it the most vocal veterans, the deftest storytellers, or simply those who published first? If even those who fought side by side couldn't agree, what does that say about the truth we've inherited? Perhaps the real conflict wasn't just fought on battlefields, but in the pages of magazines like The Confederate Veteran, where aging soldiers jostled to cement their legacies. What other stories were lost or distorted? What lies buried in archives or faded letters? Whose version do we trust? Have you uncovered a family tale that upended your understanding of history? Which Civil War myth demands scrutiny next? History isn't merely facts, it's about who controls the pen, and perhaps it's time to challenge the tales we've been told.